All right, we're on here live with Nathan Choate, head coach at LMU. Before I get to his background, the first thing I told him was he actually beat Greg Wallace's background. I'm highly, highly impressed with your Zoom background at LMU Field.
Well, that's one of the things. Obviously, Brazel Stadium's a great stadium, but the one thing I made sure was I saw Coach Wallace's interview with you, and I said, okay, I need to make sure that our background is better because we are in sunny Southern California, 2 miles from the ocean. So
Yeah, you guys have definitely set the standard. So actually, I have Coach Moore on tomorrow
okay.
for an interview, and hopefully he doesn't have his desk like I do. He's got to have a much bigger background tomorrow's interview. But Nathan, the first thing I want you to do is kind of just give your background really quick. Obviously, I said you're the head coach of Loyola Marymount in California, but kind of give your coaching background, playing background, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I played at a California junior college, Santa Ana Junior College, went to high school in Southern California. Then I played at Cal Poly up in San Luis Obispo. When I got into coaching, I started at UC Irvine. I was a director of baseball operations, a volunteer assistant. Then I went to UC Riverside. I was there for 4 years as a pitching coach and recruiting coordinator. From there, I went to Grand Canyon University out in Phoenix with Coach Stankiewicz, and I was there for 5 years. Loved it, enjoyed it. And then from there, I went to the University of San Diego. I was there for 2 years and then left there. And then last year was my first year at LMU. And then Coach Gill got the job at USC, and they gave me the keys to the kingdom at LMU. So I'm running the program now here. So good to be happy.
You're never going to forget your first year, right? Your first year as a head coach was suspended or postponed from the virus. How is it your first year you deal with something that's never happened in the history of all our lives?
Yeah, it obviously was a shock for everybody. I feel bad for our seniors. I think the NCAA did the absolute right thing by giving them their year back and enabling them to come back and play for the guys that choose to do that. But yeah, we were just starting to play better. We won 3 out of our first series on the year. We were at BYU getting ready to play that night when we found out. And so obviously disappointed for our guys and our players and our coaches just for the amount of work they had put in the fall and in the winter. But like I tell our guys all the time, life's not fair. Life's not fair. You deal with it accordingly, and our guys are tough guys, and they'll handle it the right way.
Well, going on to that too, doing the first year of this pandemic, how with this extra year people were given, how have you communicated with your current roster, obviously seniors as well through freshmen? How have you communicated with them? How often? And then how have you communicated with incoming recruits, whether it be 20s, 21s, 22s, if you have any, and talk about how it affects them personally?
Yeah, the guys in our program, we use GroupMe and text, and then our coaching staff is split up into groups of who talks to each guys, so that way everybody feels like they're getting some individual attention. But our guys have been great. Our current players have been great. We've done Zoom meetings with the incoming recruits. Sometimes the guys that were seniors in high school, they have more questions than the guys that were here. They know their routine. So I think there's much more concern with incoming recruits, how this is going to affect them, than probably our players. I think our players have handled it in stride and are concentrating on getting it done in the classroom. So, but we have done all the things that people are doing, Zoom calls, obviously texting, constant communication, and just making sure guys mentally are in a pretty good place because, like you said, there's no script for this. There's no way that you're supposed to feel.
So my next question would be, being a longtime assistant coach, what's been the change going from an assistant coach to head coach for you? What's been the biggest difference for you?
The nights are a lot longer as a head coach than as an assistant. I think, as an assistant, you're fully involved and you're passionate about the program and it being successful. But as the head coach, it is constant. It is 24/7. It's all areas of the program. It's constant questions. And so I think just the totality of it all, of being in charge of everything that goes into running a program, that's been the biggest thing is, I was an assistant for 15 years and I was very passionate and I cared, but when you're in charge of the program, there's a huge responsibility to oversee everything. So I think just that's probably been the biggest difference.
The next one would be, going to, well, as assistant coach, sometimes you think you're doing all the work and head coach isn't doing a lot, but now you can kind of speak to how that's not really true.
100%. And I was an assistant coach for 5 different Division I head coaches. And I realized what a pain in the butt I was. So to those guys, I apologize. But no, it is it's much more work and all encompassing as a head coach. But yeah, as an assistant, you think that you know everything that's going on, but there's a lot of things behind the scenes that you don't know. So
The next question would be kind of more on California. Obviously, you played in California high school, JC 4-year ball, and then obviously coached in California for a long time as well. What do outsiders need to know about California amateur baseball from the high school and college ranks, team recruiting ranks? Because where I live in Arizona, California is a really attractive place for a lot of kids. What do they not understand about California amateur baseball recruiting?
it is just so competitive from the sheer number of players. Even with all the social media now and the way to contact schools, there are still players that are slipping through the cracks, believe it or not, just because the sheer volume. Kids that are football players, they may not do the travel ball scene, all of those types of things. And so it is just ultra competitive because of the sheer number of players. Now, I lived in Phoenix for 5 years, and the quality of baseball in Phoenix is really, really good as well. It's just you don't have the dense population as you do in California. And so I think that's the biggest thing, where in a really good class in Arizona, you may have 20 to 30 really good players, pretty deep. Well, you get into California, that's just, you have that in San Diego.
Right.
And then in Orange County, you got its area, and then Riverside County, and then you got LA County, you got the Valley. You get up to the Central Coast, you get into Fresno, you get to Northern California, you get Sacramento. I mean, there are pockets everywhere with really, really good talent in California. So you can't even look at it as a whole state. We have to break it down into regions because it's so dense, the population. There's so much good talent here.
So what advice would you give, I mean, for an out-of-area LA kid? So I don't want to say out of California, say out-of-area kid, maybe NorCal or even different parts of California, or an out-of-state kid. What advice would you give them if they had a sincere interest in LMU?
You know what? I think you need to find the niche in which school you want to go to. Obviously the California state system is really good. The private schools and the WCC are also good. Players, they're different types of kids that are looking for a different college experience. And so I think the first thing you need to do is you need to identify what type of school you want to go to. Because if you are talking to probably Long Beach, LMU, you might not be looking for the same things. Obviously both schools get good players, but the college experience from an academic standpoint are going to be slightly different. And so I think the first thing is identify what type of school you want to go to, and then obviously reaching out. One of the big things is our prospect camps. We always get 2 or 3 guys at every prospect camp that end up coming to our place. And a lot of times those are the out-of-state guys. Now, from affordability standpoint, if you're living in Chicago, you can't afford to come out here 5 times. So I would pick maybe 1 or 2 schools. And if you're having constant communication with those schools and it seems like it's a good fit, then maybe pursue it at that point.
Good. I think you bring up a great point. A lot of our stuff that the people do is through video, initial communication, and whatnot too. Let's just say, going off what you said, your scenario, let's say that a kid does come from Chicago, goes to LMU camp, and you like him. He's a sophomore in high school. You think he's got some talent, possibly could be a guy for you at some point in time. How does that work to actually now make a decision, a yes on him or no on him, and he's all the way across the country? How does he need to come back out or send you video? How does that really work?
Yeah. So, we don't get real into the 23s and 24s, the freshmen and sophomore. We spend most of our time on the juniors and seniors. But if it's an underclassman in that situation, obviously any tournaments that they come out to in the summertime, we will stay in communication, and then we will see them again, 4 or 5 months later, whether it be a summer tournament, whether it be the JOs, some tournament in Arizona. So we will cross paths again, right? And we'll look and see where they're at in their development from where they were 6 months previous, and then, like I said, just because you like a school, there's an academic component. For us, a freshman or sophomore in high school, he may only have, a 3.1 GPA at the time, and we're looking for maybe a higher GPA. Well, he still has 2 or 3 years to get that GPA up. So we got to track it from that standpoint. So there's more parts to it than just the baseball assessment. We need to see that they're going to do a good job. I mean, offering a kid for a place like us as a freshman, and we haven't even seen him take his algebra, his geometry, or trig classes. I mean, if he can't pass those, then he's probably not going to be a good candidate to come to a place like LMU. So the biggest thing is to, at that point, stay in communication. And then when they play again, we'll go and obviously watch them again.
So this is a little more personal question. Give all the information you want here. Being a recruiting guy for USD, GCU, Riverside, you've been on the road a lot, and there's this kind of camaraderie on the road as far as, hey, we're friends, but also we're competing type thing. What's been a program, or you can mention a guy or two, it's up to you how you want to answer the question. What's been a program or guy or two you feel like, man, this guy works their butt off. I feel like he's kind of burning the midnight oil. He's kind of tough to recruit against, or program-wise.
Yeah. Well, the first guy I'm going to say is Greg Wallace. I worked with Greg, and so obviously I have a ton of respect for him. Tony Asaro, who is now our recruiting coordinator. That's one of the reasons I hired Tony. His work ethic is unbelievable. He is always working. He's always grinding. So he would be a guy. He was at Cal State Northridge the last few years. Andrew Brasington from Cal Baptist, I think, does a great job kind of finding guys under the radar. They're obviously a new Division I program, but I think he does a really, really good job. And then, it's the usual suspects. Coach Valenzuela does a great job. They're on a lot of guys at Long Beach State, and when he was at St. Mary's previously, and so they obviously do a really good job as well.
Good. And when you go out to watch, obviously the springtime high schools are playing as well, and then summer circuit, fall circuit as well. Do you enjoy watching, you yourself, do you enjoy watching a high school game to evaluate players, or do you enjoy watching a club tournament game for you to evaluate?
For me personally, it's not even close. I would go to a high school game in a heartbeat over a club game. And the only reason why is those kids grew up in those communities, right? And a lot of those kids went to middle school together, elementary school, and there's just something about them playing for their high school. And like the high school playoffs, both in Arizona and California, are honestly my favorite events to go to. It's just the passion that guys are playing with, the unselfishness that they're playing with. It's true team baseball. I think you get a better read on kids when they fail, as opposed to sometimes some of the showcase stuff. Guys will get their, a pitcher will throw to 5 hitters and that's it. And you don't get to high school game, you get to see them fail a little bit more, or it maybe means a little bit more to them because they care about their teammates, or they have deeper relationships with their teammates. So when they struggle, I think it may affect them a little bit more deeply. But no question, going to a high school game, it's one of my favorite things to do is to go to high school games.
One of the things that we battle sometimes is, what is a reliable resource? So everybody has information, from high school coach to club coach to third party to whoever else too. When you get things sent your way from various sources or people or coaches or liaisons, whatever you want to call them, what makes somebody reliable in your estimation? What makes you take their opinion and work with it versus kind of dismissing it?
I think a history, obviously those relationships are built over time where you think back and you go, hey, this person told me about this player and this player and this player. Whether you ended up getting them or not, you kind of track where that player went. And if they were successful, hey, that person really evaluates players like we do. And so I think different people evaluate players differently. And so I have different contacts that through the years, have sent us a player that went on to have a good career. Obviously, when they reach out, that's going to mean more than somebody that's giving me 15 names. Sometimes one of the things that people will do is they go, hey, coach, I got 14 guys for you, 14 Division I guys. And it's like, no, you don't. You don't have 14 guys on one team. It doesn't work that way. And so when that happens, you kind of take a step back and go, okay. But I think the biggest thing is just the relationships of over the years that is built, that network is built. Of people in the game. And it may not even be people that you've worked with or they've recommended people, but maybe people that were coaches somewhere else and you like their players and now they're not coaching. Right. And now all of a sudden they're in a different industry. And if they give you a call, you're probably going to listen a little bit more. So.
Would you say that there's a difference between the club ball and high school ball just because the club guy sees more levels of talent and the high school is more in kind of a smaller sector, if you will?
Yeah, I definitely, almost all kids play club ball now. And I know there's way more emphasis on the club ball. They play more. Like I said, we won't offer a guy until we talk to the high school coach still to this day. Because
really?
Because I want to find – the high school coach is going to tell me about his makeup, his character. Not that the travel ball coach won't, but the high school coach I think is going to have a better feel for what's going on in class, what his social life is like. So I think he's going to have more insight there. But absolutely, I think the travel ball coach is going to say, hey, this guy's getting better. I saw him in June and now it's August, and he's gotten so much better over these last 2 months developmentally. So I think there's obviously a place for both. I don't think it's either or. I think it's just communicating with both the club coach and the high school coach, and for us trying to get as much information as we possibly can before we make a decision.
What's important for high school players to hear, because sometimes, the guys we work with, they deem as club ball is higher because of whatever it may be. And sometimes they're jerks, they blow off their high school coach. They said, listen, they're gonna talk about you whether you realize it or not. So I think it's really good for them to hear that, because that is a component of recruiting. When you're looking at players, obviously shifting from assistant coach to head coach, how often do you need to see them play or put eyeballs on them to make a decision on them?
A member of my staff has to. Myself, just because it's in my DNA and it's in my personality, I still like to see every single guy before we offer. That is not always the case. We can't always do that. But I know that every player in our incoming class I have seen, and I saw it before we offered. Now, you obviously have to trust your assistant coaches to do their job. If they come in and they're pounding on your desk and saying, hey, this guy, I'm willing to put my name on the line for this guy, he's really good, and I just don't have an opportunity to see him, then I'm going to obviously trust my assistant. But, yeah, putting our eyes on him, I think it goes back to how invested are you in the player. I mean, if when I married my wife, right, I didn't just go on a date and say, hey, will you marry me? Like, I was like, hey, we're going to stick through this thing. So we're going to go out a few times, really get to know each other. So we were engaged for 2 years. She wouldn't want me to tell you that, but we were engaged for 2 years, because once it was done, it was done. And so I know once we make that offer, we want to make sure that it's going to be a good fit.
So after watching a kid play, when you guys watching him play, how much digging on the background do you do? So you said you call a high school coach. How much digging do you do on makeup?
Everything. Everything is about makeup. I think that is the biggest deciding factor amongst players. For me personally, it does not matter how good you are if you program. It's that simple. There's enough really good players out there that I want guys with good makeup that want to be at LMU, right? And we're not going to be a used car salesman where you get here 3 months later and then you call your mom and dad and you hate it. Like, I want guys that want to be at LMU, and so we do a ton of research of finding the guys that want to be in our program.
Awesome. Was there, you don't have to name a player here again. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but has there been a time where you overvalued a player, got to campus, didn't work out, and then what made you wrong or overvalue a guy? What was that trait or traits?
Yeah, that's happened several times, more times than I'd like to admit. But I think that's pretty common for anybody. Obviously, even in the scouting industry, people miss or misevaluate things. Sometimes it's not necessarily a talent thing. It's how kids deal with failure. That's one of the things that you can't really measure. You try to measure it in the makeup, but the tools and the physical skills are fine. But they get into an environment like in college, right, and they're failing for the first time in a long time, because in high school and travel ball, they were the best player. And I have found several kids that get into that rut where they're struggling and they just can't get out of their own head. They can't get out of their own way. They just start to question whether they're good enough or the game's going too fast for them. And it's not a physical skill standpoint. It's more of a mentality standpoint.
Do you have anything in place for freshmen? I assume a lot of times it's first-year guys or freshmen typically. Do you have anything in place that freshmen, you're like, you know what, this freshman, has to work through this. Here's what we do for a guy like that.
Yeah, I think there is a built-in level of acceptance for freshmen. You treat your players differently. Obviously, you're going to treat your junior that's messing up way different than your freshman that's going to mess up. And so we try to be way more patient with the freshmen and understand. But all they need to do is they need to show progress, right? And if they can't show progress, that's when there's going to start to be an issue. Right. But as long as there's progress and guys are getting better, I think we're in a pretty good place. But it's just when there's no progress and they continue to make the same mistakes and the game's just going too fast for them.
A few more questions here. What is one of the things our players run into a lot? Our players will email schools, get contact, and a lot of our guys, they'd rather be told no. Hey, listen, it's not a fit for you, versus being strung along. And I'm a former college coach. I always kind of tell them, I said, listen, sometimes you develop late, things
Yeah.
change, roster opens up. They don't want to say no because things may change. But in some cases, right away it's not a fit. And let's just say a guy is constantly contacting you. You can see, what, no matter what's going to happen, this is probably not going to change. What do you do with a guy like that?
We, if he continually emails us, I or Tony or Coach Curtis will respond and say, hey, listen, we just don't feel like it's the right fit, or we're full or whatever the case may be. One of the things that I think players and families don't understand is certain players fit different styles of program better than others, and so
explain that, because I think it's a really good point. Explain that a little bit more in detail if you can.
Okay. So for me, I'm still the pitching coach, and even though I'm the head coach, but guys that don't throw strikes have a hard time in our program. I have a hard time coaching those guys. There's some programs out there that want the guy that's throwing 92 and he's projectable, and he throws hard and he has the good stuff, but he doesn't throw any strikes, right? And so for me, that guy, it just doesn't fit. And in my history, that guy doesn't typically fit.
Right.
Now, obviously, we all want the guy that's 92, 93 that throws strikes. I'm not saying we don't want that guy, but there's certain programs where every guy is 6'3" and they look the same way and the arms coming out of the same slot. If you look at our pitching staffs, the pitching staffs that I've coached, we have guys that are 6'7", and we have guys that are 5'10", and we have them anywhere in between. And so I think it just depends what school you're looking for. If you're a kid that is 6'5" and you don't throw strikes, but you can touch 92, but you walk everybody, LMU is not going to be a good fit for you.
Right.
It's just not going to be a good fit for you. Where other programs, they may take that kid and try and develop them, and it may be a better fit. So.
Right. That's a good point. Again, I don't think a lot of parents think that in the equation. They just kind of see player A, school A, why isn't it fit? But I think there's a deeper thing to that stuff too. So, being your first year at LMU, what is – actually two questions. We'll wrap this up. What is why LMU? Why LMU? So if you're competing against whatever school's out there and there's 2 schools left or 3 schools left and they're trying to choose between LMU and another school, why would somebody choose LMU?
Well, I think it depends on the kid. The big thing for us is, honestly, I'm looking for guys that have a huge imagination, which people laugh at this. I think you can win a national championship in baseball at LMU. I do believe that. So you have to have a huge imagination in order to come here, and then you have to have a huge chip on your shoulder. Because when we go to play USC and UCLA and those places that you grew up maybe wanting to go, we're going to go play them, and we're going to try and beat them, right? We're not just showing up to play a game. And so I think if that's in your DNA, like if you're a guy that loves to dream, if you're a guy that loves to prove people wrong, and if you love the beach in Southern California, it's a pretty good spot. I mean, academically, it is such a good institution, and the degree obviously is super valuable. And then playing baseball in the WCC, which people don't understand how good the WCC is. I honestly didn't understand how good it was being in the Big West for so long, but the WCC conference at baseball is really, really good. I mean, the top 6 or 7 schools are really, really good. And so, like I said, our non-conference schedule, all those things you put into it, I think it's just a great fit for a guy that wants to play baseball. If you're a baseball player, if that's the number one thing, if you're a baseball player, we're a great fit. There's some programs that have a little bit more eyewash and some of the stuff, then we wouldn't be a good fit. But if you're a baseball player, if you want to play baseball, this is the place to go.
I've never heard the word imagination used in recruiting. Really cool word as far as that stuff goes. I think it's really kind of a different word that I've heard. So last question would be, if your tenure lasts there, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, whatever it lasts for your time there, what do you want LMU to be under your watch? What type of culture, what type of team, what type of environment do you want LMU to be under your watch?
Yeah, I like I said, I think I want to leave – I know for a fact I want to leave the program in a better place than I found it, right, which is obviously huge expectations because of the year we had last year under Coach Gill. But I want the culture. I want our players to play hard. I want them to play with their hair on fire. And I want our guys, when they come back to alumni games, they absolutely loved their 3 or 4 years playing baseball at LMU. If kids – I've been around programs where that's not always the case. If that's my case, if that's my legacy, that when kids are done playing at our place, they no longer love the game of baseball, then I have failed them, because they should have more love and passion for their 3 or 4 years at LMU than any other time in their life. And so hopefully while guys play here for me in our program, they have the time of their life. The culture is one where we're going to be super competitive. And like I said, huge imagination and then a chip on your shoulder to prove those people wrong that think you can't do what I know we can do here. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. I know that being busy in a baseball sense is one thing, and being busy at home with 4 kids is something else. But you said you're lucky enough to have your wife, hold the reins there as well.
Yeah, she is ready for us to go back to work when it is safe and for everyone to go back. But that's why I have this background, so I'm looking at the baseball field. So
awesome. Well, hopefully be back on the field soon. I'm sure you'll be out recruiting here soon. So Nathan, thank you for your time today.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks, Mike.
Alrighty. Bye.